Everybody. In my last talk, I talked about 12 common types of thinking and provided an overview about them. At the end of the talk, I mentioned that one important aspect of science is that it tries to remove subjectivity out of thinking to make ideas and thinking more objective. Now, I had promised in the last talk that I will discuss those 12 types of thinking in somewhat detail in individual presentations. But before I do that, it is important that I talk a bit more about what is subjective thinking and how science tries to make it more objective. Now, again, just to recap, a subjective thinking or subjective view is a perspective or preference that is based on personal belief, experience, or observation. And it's that one person's view. And it may be very congruent or very much similar to what objective view is about that situation, but it still is one person's subjective view. Objective, on the other hand, is a systematic approach to remove subjectivity from an observation or a perspective. So if someone has a certain type of view or a perspective or a belief, there may be personal biases, emotions, preconceptions, previous cognition, whatever that person has been reading and how that person has been exposed to that matter, all that subjective personal experience will bring in that perspective. So we try to remove the biases. We try to remove anything that makes that perspective specific to that individual. Now I'm going to discuss this with an example, and I could have taken any type of example from medicine, that is my field, but I decided to go with something more social, so that people who are not in medical sciences or biological sciences or social sciences, they can also get a bit of understanding of what subjective views are and how science tries to remove subjectivity to make it more objective. Now, the example I'm using is of a black cat. And in many cultures, if a black cat crosses your path, there are views about it. And in most cultures, it is considered to be a bad omen. It's considered to be a warning, or it's considered to be something bad might happen. So it's across the cultures. It's in India, in Europe, in the States, so in many parts of the world, many countries of the world. So let's assume that I'm one of those people, and I also believe that if a black cat is going to cross my path, something bad is going to happen to me. Now, that's my subjective perspective, but I want to look at it in an objective way. So to remove the subjectivity out of it, because I don't have proof for that. I learned it from somewhere, and I exactly don't know how I had acquired this belief, but I have a belief, and now I want to see whether there is any truth to this personal belief or not. So I decide to do an objective assessment of my view. So here I've listed 4 major ways or processes that I can use to assess whether my subjective view is correct or not. So I can remove my own subjectivity out of it. So first step will be that I ask other people about it. Next step will be that I review literature about how this thing developed and what people believe about it. I look at the literature to see if there have been any studies about it. And third option will be that I start maintaining a log. So every time a black cat crosses my path, I go on with my day, I go on my activities, and after the day ends, I write it down how my day was, or if there was any big mishap or misfortune or any bad incident for that day or not. And fourth way will be that I perform a well-designed study. Now let me walk through all these four options in a bit of detail. So I go around, I ask 20, 30, 50 people, my friends, my colleagues, family members, and after, say, asking 30 people, 21 of them say yes. If a black cat crosses the path, it's bad for you, that something bad is going to happen to you. So basically, 70% of the people I talk to, they validate my view. And it means a lot of people believe what I believe. So it takes away a bit of subjectivity, but again, when I ask those people how do they know, they simply say it's just that they'll heard from somewhere, or that's what they believe. They also don't have any evidence for it. So it's basically their subjective view. And the remaining 9 people, or 30% of the people, some of them are indifferent and some they know it doesn't matter. So they also are unable to provide me any reliable information. So I say, okay, let's move to the next step, and I start reviewing the literature. So when I review the literature, I read about it and I figure out that, okay, Indians or Hindus believe in it. And the reason Hindus believe in it is because one of their gods, I believe it's the god of karma, or justice, who is black, pitch black, and they believe that when a black cat crosses the path, it's that god of karma disguised as a cat to warn you that you are going to get a bad day because of something you did bad in the past. So again, it's a myth. It's not a scientific literature. It's just it's a belief system from mythology or religion. I also read that at one point, a few centuries ago, when there was a lot of belief about witches in Christianity, that black cat were assistant to witches. So they assume that black cat is maybe a disguised Satan or evil. So that's why they believe that if a black cat crosses your path, something bad is going to happen because Satan is crossing your path. So it's all mythology. So I can't find anything that can show me that somebody did study this and figured out, yes, this is what happens. So I decide to go for the next step, and I say, okay, I'm going to maintain a log, but there are not many black cats around in my neighborhood, so I don't run into black cats often. So even after several weeks or months, there's not really a single incident, or there's probably one incident, and that, or over a year, there are a few incidents, but those are too few to really give me an idea, because say there are 5 encounters with a black cat in a year, and out of those 5 days, 3 days or 2 days, they're not the best, and something bad happens one of those days, or I get a bad news or something. But that may be just out of incident. It might still have happened even if the black cat had not crossed my path. And that's by chance, right? Because in a year, there were 365 days. I didn't record all the 365 days. So there are other days where I got they were not the best days, or I got a bad news, and black cat did not cross my path. So I'm not sure what to make of those few incidents. So it's not providing me much objective evidence. So to really figure this out, we will have to design a proper study to establish my subjective viewpoint. And it's going to be a very complex study. It will have to involve tens or hundreds of people, and we will have to have thousands of encounters with the black cat, with a black cat crossing the path. And we'll also have to maintain and log about the days that black cat is not crossing the path. So essentially, it will be very difficult to study. But smaller studies may help. And so once we get tens of smaller studies, we may start getting some evidence about whether my belief that when a black cat crosses my path, it's going to be bad or not bad. So it will take a while to establish that. And despite that, it will not be robust because of the nature of the hypothesis. So this presentation was essentially to explain this is what science does. Science takes something that is subjective view, and that subjective view can be then transformed into a hypothesis. And then we use different types of thinking models to see which model will best help us determine whether that subjective view has an objective validity to it or not. Now, before I conclude this talk, I want to make a few important points about being objective. First of all, how much objective we can be varies by the situation. So there will be situations where there is some literature, but literature is not enough because studying those matters are very complex. So we have not been able to really accumulate much of scientific data about it. So the objective data will be limited. Whereas in other instances, the objective data might be very robust because there may be tens of studies supporting the same objective conclusion over and over the course of several years. The second point is that being as objective as possible is one of the aims of scientific methodology. So we know that many times we would do studies that do not necessarily provide a decisive objective output, but they help gather information in an objective manner. So we continue that process, and once we do it over and over, similar hypotheses but different designs or similar designs, and once data accumulates, and that's where you will see terms like meta-analysis, or you'll have to review the literature. Now, third point is that robust research that is consistently reproducible adds to objectivity. So if the research is not robust, if the methodology is not robust, if the methodology is flawed, and we will get to the methodology part probably in about 10 to 15 lectures from now. So if methodology is not robust, you're basically just producing material which does not have objective validity, and it will in fact corrupt science, because people will not be able to understand that those data are not reliable, they are not robust, and they'll start taking those data as objective data. And That's why generals, good quality generals, they go through a very painful process of reviews and making sure that good quality articles get published. But now we have hundreds of poor quality journals as well, and I'll probably discuss that sometime down the road. Finally, objectiveness changes as new tools and new data emerge. So if we are measuring something in a certain way now, but say in a few years we develop a device or a method that measures the same thing more precisely and more accurately, then objective data will change, or might change. So also, as I mentioned, that a lot of scientific projects or studies, they are difficult in terms of putting together a study that establishes something for good. So that's why science keeps evolving, because we develop new methodologies, we develop new tools, we develop new theories, and we keep making progress. So there is nothing firm. So even when a data is objective, so if as a scientist, when I'll tell somebody, if I get adamant about some point, I will be adamant based on the data, not adamant that what that data is saying is the final word, because that might change in 5 years from now. What I will be adamant about that at this time, the data we have, that is what it shows. So we can't be 100% absolute in terms of objectivity. So that ends this talk. And as I always request, firstly, if you have not watched the previous videos, please watch them, because a lot of this is in continuity. And if you don't know the previous thing, it will be difficult for you to catch up with the new presentation. And secondly, if you find these are interesting or these are helpful, please do share with your colleagues and friends. Thank you very much. Bye.